young girl took over her sick mother's job cooking at a ranch. The lonely rancher gave her one chance and suddenly falls for her. Brant Ranch, Wyoming Territory. Early morning, spring thaw of 1877. Snow is melting and dust covers the weathered wood of the farmhouse. Soon Avery guided her mare through the muddy ruts leading to the ranch gate. Her breath drifted in the crisp air, misting, before she reached the rough-hewn steps that led to the kitchen door. She dismounted, reins in hand, and lifted one boot to knock firmly on the splintered wood. The rancher's kitchen was known for being quiet, both in sound and sentiment, and she swallowed her fear before knocking again. The door swung open, revealing Cole Brant, tall, lean, graying at the temples, eyes guarded. He looked at her with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "Who are you?" he asked without preamble. June squared her shoulders and met his gaze head-on. "I'm taking over breakfast for my mother," she said clearly. "She is sick and needs rest. If you'll let me try, I'll cook for you this morning." Cole raised an eyebrow, his jaw clenched. The barn hands had warned him a replacement cook was coming. No one knew who she was or what mess she might make, but he did not like surprises. He sized her up. 19 years old. Grief in her eyes, but determination carved into her jaw. He nodded once. "One day." June's face relaxed into a small smile. "Thank you, sir. I will not disappoint." She stepped inside. Cole nudged the door shut, and silence settled between them. The kitchen smelled faintly of stale grease and old logs burned cold. June set down her satchel of ingredients, fresh eggs, wild onion, dried herbs, then rolled up her sleeves and set to work. Every task was precise, cracking eggs with even taps, whisking without spilling, folding herbs into stewing meat. The kitchen came alive with motion and purpose. Cole stood in the doorway, arms crossed, silence heavy, as he watched June's hands, quick and sure. He had not expected competence. He had expected chaos. His jaw tightened as the stew bubbled and the skillet sizzled. He even leaned closer, unconsciously, nudging the door open. June paused, glanced toward him, then turned back to the stove. She ladled meat and gravy into a cast iron pot, and set it carefully on the table. She whisked the eggs into a pan, steam rising like memory. She placed a single slice of bread beside each serving plate. It was simple, honest food, rustic but filled with flavor. The aroma drifted through the kitchen and into the adjacent dining area where Cole stood, unmoving. He stepped forward and picked up the ladle, a single spoonful of stew. The warmth fogged his gaze. He brought the spoon to his lips and paused, then ate. The stew was rich, savory, with herbs he did not recognize but responded to in his chest with something unexpected. Comfort. He looked at June. She stood straight by the stove, heart pounding, but her face calm. He did not speak. He turned and trudged outward, then paused, then walked back into the kitchen and set down a pitcher of milk with a quiet clink. June caught her breath. Cole's eyes met hers once, lingered. Then he returned to the door without another word. June began plating eggs and toast as the ranch hands filed in. They took their seats, cast doubtful glances, but tasted the food. Soon only spoons and forks moved. Quiet fell over the long table except for the occasional soft murmur. "Good, simple, thank you." Envy followed them from several high windows. By the time they finished, every plate was clean. June silently cleared them from the table and began washing dishes. Cole lingered nearby. He said, "That was good." June paused her hand in soapy water and looked up. "Thank you, sir." He nodded and walked away, but paused at the door and looked back once more. "Tomorrow," he said. June swallowed, though she had not eaten herself. "Yes, sir, tomorrow." Cole nodded again and stepped outside. The door closed and June exhaled deeply, washing her hands with purpose. Cole had been ready to dismiss her, ready to upset the stew pot in disdain. But the scent arrested him. The taste surprised him, and for the first time since his wife died, someone had earned more than a passing nod in his kitchen. That same morning, shortly after sunrise, June stepped from behind the counter, heart pounding as she watched ranch hands eye the breakfast she had laid out. Golden cornbread muffins, crisp bacon, and scrambled eggs with wild herbs. The long rough-hewn table was filled with skeptical faces. Word about the new cook had spread fast, and expectations were low. Corn muffins? A cowboy sneered, slicing one open. Bet it's dry as Kansas. He took a bite. Heads turned. His eyebrows shot up. He swallowed, relaxed, and took another. A quiet murmur followed. Not bad. A burly ranch hand dipped his fork into the eggs. Herbs from the garden? He asked, surprised. June nodded and wiped her hands. The men ate respectfully, breaking the silence, only to say, real good and tastes like home. June exhaled slowly and began clearing the table, filling pitchers with water and milk, wiping crumbs into a bowl. She avoided glancing at Cole, who sat at the head of the table. He never ate breakfast with them, but she felt his gaze as she worked. Once the last plate was cleared and the table wiped, June turned. She expected nods, maybe a polite word. Instead, she found Cole standing by the table, staring at the crumbs. He nodded once, turned and left without a word, leaving silence behind. June blinked, searching his face. He didn't return. She washed dishes in focused silence, turning mugs upside down, wiping the stove, folding cloths. Each movement spoke of respect for her craft and respect for those who used it. Outside, morning light shifted through drifting clouds. Ranch hands trickled out, heading to chores. June lingered at the sink, listening to empty kitchen echoes. Then she saw it on the step by the door, a bottle of fresh milk. Dawn dew glistened on its glass surface. No note, no flourish, just milk. Her breath caught as she lifted it cold and kind. She read the label. It came from the ranch herd. It had been years since she tasted milk so fresh. June stood quietly, hand resting on the bottle, then whispered, "Thank you, sir." She gently placed it on the counter, then returned to her work, her heart lighter. The day continued without fuss. June prepared a hearty midday lunch, seasoned beef stew, baked beans, and crusty bread. As evening fell, she baked pumpkin pie using squash from her mother's cellar. Her kitchen filled with sweet cinnamon and butter. The ranch hands ate in appreciative silence. At the end of dinner, June swiftly cleared the table, stacked and washed plates with practiced care. As she finished folding cloths, Cole appeared in the doorway. She froze, a plate dripping suds from her hand. He watched for a long moment before speaking in a low, even voice. "That was fine cooking today." June's wrist stilled midair. She met his gaze. "Thank you," she replied softly. Cole nodded once, turned and left without looking back. June watched him go, heart pounding. She sat down the towel, folded her hands. In that quiet kitchen, she felt something shift. Confidence, relief, or perhaps hope. No fireworks, no grand declarations, just milk on a doorstep, a quiet word of praise, and a kitchen held together with care. But sometimes the quietest approvals leave the deepest marks. Brant Ranch Kitchen and Barn. Early morning about 1 week after June's arrival. June woke before dawn. Pale light seeping through the window. She dressed swiftly in the cold, gathering needle and scrap cloth. Outside patches of snow lingered in the shade. She slipped through the kitchen door and stitched a neat knot in the torn corner of the curtain. Each careful pass of the needle closing the tear. The curtain fluttered quietly as she stepped back. Next, she moved to the hitching post. Horses huffed in the cold air, steam drifting from their nostrils. June used a barn fork to sweep snow from the troughs and clear the path so they could drink. It was quiet, humble work, but it did not go unnoticed. Cole appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. He paused, put down his mug, touched the fork's handle, then walked away without a word. June returned to the kitchen and began preparing blueberry pie. She mixed flour, wild berries she'd picked earlier, sugar, eggs, and fresh milk from the bottle Cole had brought. She added a dash of cinnamon, careful to keep the crust flaky. As the dough rose, she cleaned every counter and stock in rhythmic motion. At 7:15, ranch hands filed in for breakfast. Cole lingered in the doorway longer than usual, relaxed as he leaned against the frame. The smell of warm pie filled the kitchen. June pulled the pie pan from the oven and placed it on the table, cutting generous slices and serving them with mugs of coffee. The men murmured in surprise and delight. Cole looked at June, seeing not just the pie, but her care in making it unasked for. He realized she had come not merely to cook, but to nurture. After breakfast, June headed out to the barn to stack firewood. 2 cords of split hardwood waited. Instead of reaching for them all, Cole appeared and lifted heavy logs onto the rack while she carried smaller pieces. Their shared labor made no noise, just the sound of boots on straw and logs settling in place. June smiled. Cole nodded once, and they continued in companionable silence. Later, Cole found June washing dishes. The screen door hinge squeaked. Without a word, he tightened the screw, tested the swing. It closed with a soft click. He removed his gloves, set them on the counter, and left the kitchen. That evening, June prepared vegetable stew with tender beef simmering slowly. She added spoonfuls of berry compost on the sliced bread, making open-faced berry toast garnished with mint from a pot by the window. Just as she was slicing bread, the knife slipped and nicked her palm. She gasped, dropped the loaf, and pressed her hand to her heart as blood welled. The room went still. Cole was at her side instantly. He pressed a cloth over the cut, running his fingers gently under cold water. June's breath caught. Only the crackle from the hearth filled the room. He wrapped fresh linen around her palm, fingers deft, but trembling, not out of shock, but something tender. As he tied a tight knot, his eyes met hers. She nodded silently, voice soft. "Thank you, sir." Cole pressed a finger under her wrist to check her pulse. "Good," he said softly. "You eat with them tonight. I'll tend the stew." June swallowed, warmth blooming in her chest. At dusk, she took a seat at the table, cloth still wrapped around her palm, and ate with the ranch hands. Cole arrived with bowls of stew, placing one in front of her and holding her gaze. She offered a small smile. When she finished, she reached for her bowl. Cole took it from her, walked her to the counter, filled it with water, and washed it. Their hands brushed as the bowl passed between them. June's heart fluttered. Cole paused, then looked into her eyes and nodded, a wordless acknowledgement that something had shifted. Twilight settled. June cleared more dishes while Cole lingered in the doorway. He stepped forward, picked up the milk bottle, refilled her pitcher, and set it next to her elbow. Their fingers brushed again. June felt a warmth surpassing the hearth's glow. Cole lifted his cap, scratched at his stubble, and surveyed the kitchen, neatly stacked firewood, the patched curtain, the washed dishes, and June's quiet composure. He nodded, turned, and stepped into the dusk. June exhaled, rinsing her hands in clean water. She sensed that unspoken things, quiet acts of care, were building something fragile but strong between them, gestures that spoke louder than words. A cold winter evening just after dusk. June slid the pan from the wood-fired oven, careful not to tilt the golden-crusted pie she had baked for the ranch. Snow pressed against the window panes and flickers from the hearth lit her rosy cheeks. She placed the pie on a low table by the fire, then pulled up a sturdy wooden chair and sat a few feet away, tending the embers' glow. Moments later, Cole stepped in silently. He carried nothing. He sat on a rough bench by the hearth, not at the table, but close enough. Smoke curled above him as he exhaled, watching June with a steady calm. She resisted glancing at him at first, then felt the quiet curiosity of his gaze pulling her attention softly his way. She cleared her throat. "My mother used to make this every winter. She said it would warm hearts when the frost had worn everyone down." She watched him. Cole nodded. "I grew up in Nebraska. We had a small pantry, but Mother always found room for pie." He did not respond. Not immediately. He shifted, his boots scrunching on the hearthstones. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "Someone else baked pies like this once." June paused. The hearth crackled. Who? She asked gently. He sighed. A woman I lost. She used to press a grain of wheat into the top crust. Said it was for good fortune. He sounded distant, as if seeing something behind her. June's fingers stilled. She lifted a fork full of pie to her mouth. The taste was sweet and warm. She folded her hands. I did not know. He said nothing more. They ate in companionable quiet, the warmth slow and steady around them. When the last bite was gone, June offered tea. Cole nodded, then lingered with his mug at the sink. She washed their cups, hands braced on the edge. After she put them down, she noticed it. By the hearth, tucked under a stone, a small shard of wood, intricate, carved with the pattern of a wheat ear. Her eyes flew to Cole, who stood with his back to her, quiet as the falling snow outside. She understood without words. That symbol, grain of wheat, was exactly what he had described, and it lay in his handcrafted touch. Tears pricked as her breathing caught. She knelt by the hearth and touched it, rough and smooth under her fingers, willingly placed, not lost. Cole swallowed, voice soft. It's for protection, for this house, for whoever makes it warm. He did not meet her eyes. Her heart hammered. Thank you, she whispered. It is, she paused, astonished by how the gift felt more personal than words. He closed his eyes, a single breath. June rose slowly, moving toward him across the glowing hearthstones. She laid a hand gently on his arm. It means more than you know. He looked down at her hand, then at the carved wood, his voice was rough. It needed a place. They stood that way, the fire crackling as if in applause. No grand declaration, just warmth spread from pie to symbols to hands held together in the quiet circle of the hearth. June realized that the wheat carving was the symbol from Cole's wedding pie. His unspoken token of acceptance and memory. As she held it, Cole's fingers trembled, an unspoken admission of the past shared, and the present being shaped between them. A week later, late afternoon, mild autumn day, June stood by the stove, stirring a simmering pot of stew for supper. The ranch was quieter than usual. Her mother's letter lay open in her apron pocket, its final words weighing heavy in her mind. My fever's back. I need you home soon. She had delivered breakfast with a polite smile and